Just wanted to throw in, so we about a few months ago, we were going to do like just a 1031 class and discovered that can be just a little bit boring. You know, if you don't have a lot of questions, so we kind of pulled it back in, revised a little bit, had kind of a group session, realized some of the things that we have problems, that you have problems on, what title sees when the contracts come in. That's why we kind of changed this up a little bit. Kind of made it a fun name for the categories as well. So the autopsy of a tax sale. Normally we have another person with us from title, Joe. He's the one that sees dead people. Unfortunately, he's out looking for dead people today. So Randy's gonna do double duty. We also, some of you have seen us do our Title 101, where we come in, go from when the contract actually comes in to the commitment, to the settlement statements, through the whole process. So that's something else that we have, if it's be an option. New agents, seasoned agents, if you have a preferred closer at Meridian Title, you can come in and sit down with your closer. We can do a working lunch and go through anything like that. So anyway, with that, we're gonna start it off with Katie doing 1031.
Actually, I'm gonna start.
Oh, you're gonna go
Yeah,
first.
we're gonna
You know what, you
do the
guys,
shuffle.
you guys do you.
Okay.
All about you.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. I am going to start us off talking about tax sale properties. I'm sure you all have heard the term tax sale property, or maybe you've had an experience with one. So this morning, what I'd like to do is kind of talk about, first of all, the tax sale process. Secondly, why tax sale properties are a problem for title insurers. And then thirdly, what can be done to clean them up and make them insurable so that we can sell them and close on them. So let's start by talking about taxes. Everybody has real estate taxes. All counties operate the same way in Missouri. Taxes become due on November 1st, and they're payable by December 31st. We are in that window right now. So for 2023, we are making sure that taxes are collected and paid, or have been paid, at every closing that we're doing at Meridian. But let's say back in 2021, a person owns a piece of property and they go through the entire year, they get their tax bill from the collector's office, and they don't pay their taxes in 2021. Those taxes obviously on the very first day of 2022 become delinquent. Now that same person does the same thing in 2022. They get their bill, they don't pay it. So on day one of 2023, there are 2 years of delinquent taxes. They are delinquent for the year 2021 and the year 2022. Once a property has 2 years of delinquent taxes, it is automatically flagged as a candidate for tax sale. So that happens in the collector's office. They start a list essentially on that day, and then they start whittling it down. That person that owns that property has until the end of April of 2023 to pay 1 year's delinquent taxes. So they could come in and pay 21's taxes, but not pay 22's taxes and get their name off of that list. After April 30th of any year, they have to pay both years' taxes. So starting May 1st, they're in the situation where they have to clear all delinquent taxes to move on from the tax sale process. Why does that happen? Most counties have a process that they go through for tax sale properties, including advertising them and all that sort of stuff to prospective buyers at the actual sale. And they don't want to, if they start that process, they don't necessarily want to make it easy for that property to come out of there. So they want to clear all the taxes. And if you pay after that time, you may also have fees that are due to the county for the tax sale process. Some counties will order a title search, Greene County does, and they add that to the tax bill. So they have done a title search before the actual tax sale occurs. Now, in August, the last week of August of every year is when all tax sales occur in Missouri. So all counties have their tax sale at that time. They have published a list of the properties that have been qualified for tax sale, And they are, done everything that they can to notify people that this is going to go to tax sale. Herein lies a little bit of a problem for tax sale properties in that not all counties handle that process the same way. Greene County, because they do get a title search, they do try to send letters out to some of the interested parties. So last owner of record, anybody who has a lien on the property, any other person or entity that they think for some reason because of a recorded document may have an interest, they try to send them a letter saying, hey, this property is on our list for tax sale, and that sale is going to happen on X date. Other counties in this area do nothing. They don't send any kind of notices other than the delinquent bill to the owner of the property. So part of the problem with tax sale properties is who knows about the fact that they're going to tax sale? Who's paying attention? How many people in here read a newspaper every day? An actual physical newspaper. Well, that list of properties ends up typically getting published in the daily events in Greene County. If you're not reading the daily events, how do you know that that property is even on the list? Or, you would have to proactively go to the website for the collector in whatever county and look and see if a particular property is listed out there. So it's not really a very friendly process for everybody on the outside of that universe to know what's going on. But let's go back to the tax sale. So let's say our guy who didn't pay his taxes for 2 years is all the way up to the day of tax sale. So what happens at a tax sale? The county essentially auctions the property to the highest bidder. Now, you might think, how do you bid on that property when the taxes are what the taxes are? Well, they're looking for blue sky. They are looking for the cost of all of the taxes plus any costs that the county has incurred. Let's say on a, $250,000 house in Greene County, that might look something like $3,000 or $4,000. Well, you might think, oh my gosh, I can pay $3,000 or $4,000 at an auction and I can get this $250,000 house. Well, it doesn't work that way because all of those bidders are going to add to that number blue sky to the county, and that's called the surplus. So I may want to buy that property at the tax sale, but my bid might be $50,000 or $60,000, or it could be $150,000. Depends on the property and what all is attached to it, if there are no mortgages and things like that. And you have to look at all those variables when you want to do a tax sale property, but they simply auction them and they all go to the highest bidder. So let's say that Katie is the successful bidder on the house that we have here in our example. What Katie will do after she gets, she's the winner of the auction, she will get a certificate of purchase. And it is Katie's job to go record that at the recorder's office. And that puts the world on notice that Katie has purchased that property at the tax sale. Now, it doesn't mean that she owns it yet. She just has an interest in it because she has purchased it for the delinquent taxes. The county has collected the money from Katie. They have the money to pay the taxes. They have the money to reimburse them for their expenses, and they have her surplus. And she now has an interest in this property. So that's the way she puts the world on notice. But we're not done with the tax sale process yet because there is a year for a redemption period. So the tax defaulted owner of the property over here can come back and purchase back his property by paying the delinquent taxes and any costs to the county. He does not have to pay Katie's blue sky. Katie's blue sky is held separately by the county, and then she would have to go to the county and request those funds back if that tax defaulted owner redeems during that 1 year period. Everybody confused? Yeah.
No, I'm
uh-huh.
not.
I was gonna say,
It's crazy, isn't it? It's a crazy scheme. But let's say nobody, that this owner right here is maybe deceased and he's not gonna come in and pay and, you know, get his property back.
And his family can, right?
And, well, his family certainly could do that if they knew what was going on with the property. But often they don't, because again, there's not a really strong process for noticing all of the people involved. Now, Greene County would require Katie at the end of a year, so at the end of the redemption period, Katie would have had to have come to a title company, gotten a title report from us to see who owned the property and what liens and other things are out there on the property. And then Katie's required to write a letter to all those people certified so that there's return receipt requested to notify them that she has purchased that property at the tax sale and intends to get the collector's deed and become the true actual owner of the property. What's wrong with that picture? Well, it doesn't require her to find the heirs of the dead person or any of the other myriad of people who might be interested in that property or might claim that they have an interest in that property. So while there is some notification to certain parties, it's not universal and it's not perfect. And that is the problem for insurability. But before we get to that, let's go back to Katie. She's made it all the way through the redemption period, and this guy has not come out of the woodwork to redeem his property. So she will go to the collector and say, yep, he didn't come in. And they'll say, yep, you're right. Did you do your letters? And she'll say yes, and she'll show proof of that. And then they will give her a collector's deed. That is a deed where the county is conveying the property to her. Not the prior owner, the county is conveying it to her. Because the county, under Missouri law, has the right supposedly to do that because the taxes were delinquent and it went through the tax sale process. So then Katie would be responsible to record that deed, and then she would be the owner of record. Now, you might think, okay, well, if she followed all the rules and this is all prescribed by state law, why isn't she the owner and why can't she then sell it or mortgage it or do whatever she wants? The real problem for title insurers is due process. There is insufficient due process in this process. So we, as title insurers, don't want to insure them. Primarily because the courts in Missouri are very favorable to allow people to come 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, up to 7 years after that collector's deed to come and say, I didn't know that grandpa's farm was up to sale and I'm his granddaughter and I really want it and she shouldn't have it, I should have it. And they'll go, oh, well, yeah, you probably do have an inheritance right or something. So yeah, here you go. And they'll give it to her.
So we can't do nothing with that property for like 7 years to be
Well,
on the
yes,
safe
we can.
side?
Yes, we can. We're going to talk about what we can. But that is the way the law works. And that is the inherent problem for title insurers with these types of properties, is that we don't want to touch them because we are going to end up potentially in a great big lawsuit defending Katie because we gave her a title policy, or the person Katie sold it to because we gave them one. And then this person from way back here in this murky process comes out of the woodwork and the court goes, yeah, there are lots and lots of court decisions in Missouri that, again, are very favorable to heirs who did not know, they were not notified that this tax sale process was happening, and they come back years later and they are awarded the property. So that's the big problem with those. Now, how can we fix them? There's two really good ways to fix them. One is that the easiest is really you go to the tax defaulted owner and you ask them for a quitclaim deed. Because if you can get a quitclaim deed from that tax defaulted owner, plus you have your collector's deed, you are good. You are insurable, you're buttoned up, everything is wonderful. Now, obviously, if the tax defaulted person is deceased, that's kind of hard to do. But you can track down the heirs, figure out who knows the family, maybe find a child or a brother or something, figure out who the heirs are. We can record affidavits of heirship, which we'll talk about in my other segment. And then, you know, we can get deeds from all those people to Katie, and she would be golden and ready to go. The other option for cleaning up the property is quiet title suit. So maybe you guys have all heard of that. It is a court action where Katie goes to court and essentially sues, saying that, hey, I've gone through this process and I have done all of my stuff and due process was given to these people. And so I should have clear and free title to the property. If she's doing the quiet title suit in those first 7 years after her collector's deed, due process is kind of the core of her case. She is needing to prove that due process occurred and that everybody was notified. So it is very common in this area, certainly, for people to go and request a quiet title suit from an attorney, and the attorney does that. And they send a letter or two, and they publish it in the daily events for 45 days. Again, who reads that every day? And then they say, oh, look, Judge, we did these two things and nobody came to say, you know, it's mine, so it should be Katie's. And the judge will go, yeah, okay, boom. The problem with that is that on a lot of quiet title suits that are done, there is no personal service of the parties. And personal service is the standard which the title insurers look for in those quiet title suits. So if you guys have clients who have a property like this and they're contemplating a quiet title suit, have them talk to a title company about what things can be done or should be done in that quiet title suit process to clear up the title, really clear up the title. Don't just skim the top and call it done, because the sad thing is a lot of people go through that process, which is still expensive. I mean, we're still looking at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 and 90 to 120 days of time to do that. And then we still can't insure it because they didn't get personal service on all the parties that they needed to get personal service on. So it's really important that if you're going to go down that road, that you go and do it the right way. Obviously, the quiet title suit process is expensive and it takes a lot of time. That's why getting a quitclaim deed, even if you have to pay this person over here $500 or $1,000 to sign a deed to you, it's a better option because it's faster and it will be less expensive than that quiet title suit process. Any questions on quiet title or on tax sale properties?
Stay away from it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so when you do the first option on the quick claim deed, that ends all the timelines for redemption, right?
So we would be after the redemption period here.
So this is a year down the road.
This would
Okay.
be after Katie got her collector's deed.
Oh, okay.
You cannot interfere. Well, actually, I mean, yes, you could, I suppose, go to them during the redemption period. And if they're willing to just sign it over to you, you don't really even need the collector's deed at that point because you have a deed from them.
Gotcha.
Is a house insurable? I mean,
At what point?
after you get your certificate, is that house insurable? Because you don't
Sure.
own it.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be insurable for Katie, but it would be insurable to the person who was the tax defaulted owner. So we do some closings where there is a certificate of purchase out there. And that person is now like, well, I guess I'm really gonna lose this house. I'm gonna list it for sale and we're gonna sell it. And that's fine. We can totally do that. And as a part of that process, we of course pay off that certificate. So we pay the back taxes and the costs to the county. Katie still then would have to go and ask for her money back, you know, the blue sky that she paid for the house. But Yes, we can totally do that. And I think a lot of people look at that option with a realtor and say, yeah, let's do this because I could get some money for the house. Now, that tax defaulted person is not really just left out in the cold, because remember, Katie paid a huge surplus for purchasing that property. And if she's successful and it goes all the way through and she gets her collector's deed, the county is still sitting on that surplus. And the tax defaulted owner can go to the county. They have 2 years to go to the county and say, hey, I lost my property at tax sale. I know you guys got extra money for it. I want that money. And they have to pay that back to this person as a way to recoup some of the value that they lost. But again, if Katie paid a surplus of 50,000 and the house is really worth 200,000, you know, they didn't get the other $150,000 back that they potentially had in that property, but they can get some.
So if the mortgage, we'll say that 250, and you want it for 100,000. So who's paying that, the leftover of that mortgage, or the mortgager just kind of?
Katie would purchase that subject to whatever conditions are on the property. So if there's a mortgage out there and it goes through tax sale and she gets a collector's deed, she still has to contend with that mortgage. Now, she can put the mortgage into her quiet title action and see if that flies, because a lot of times they're asleep and it actually does. And she potentially could wipe out that mortgage on the property by saying, look, they didn't pay their taxes. Taxes are superior lien. You guys are out because I went through this process and I won. And you know, so sad. So, but she would have to do that. Yes, ma'am, in the back?
What happens to the equity that the homeowner had in the paid down mortgage?
It's gone. I mean, she would have it essentially because she would have it free of any, you know, any additional debt. So the purchaser would end up with it. But for that original person, they're out of luck. The only thing that they're gonna get if they let it go all the way is they're gonna get the surplus that Katie paid.
And so Katie is on the money trail.
Well, it is confusing, and it gets even worse confusing because after 2 years, the county has to give it to the school district.
So
So
Katie would
it's nuts.
retire the mortgage? So Katie would retire the mortgage, or the mortgage just goes away?
Well, Katie would either have to pay it, or she would have to include it in her quiet title action and get the judge to agree that the mortgage no longer attaches to the property. It doesn't go away by magic. She either's gotta have to pay it or she's gotta wipe it out in her court action. Yes,
That
ma'am?
was kind of along the lines of my question is, does she have to offer at least what that mortgage is?
No, the county doesn't care.
Okay.
They, you know, whatever the market will bear is what these properties sell for. So, you know, you have the base bid is always the taxes plus the costs that the county has incurred. That's where they have to, by law, start that bidding. So wherever it goes from there is up to how many people are interested in the property, what the property's like and all of that.
So what happens in real practice? Let's say someone owes back taxes of $10,000 and they have a mortgage for $100,000. Like if I'm a mortgage company and they're also behind on their payments, in order to avoid it being sold at a tax sale for $30,000, wouldn't I just pay the county the $10,000 that's owed in back taxes and then foreclose on the property and hope to get a portion of that $100,000 that I'm owed as the mortgage company?
Yes, except that perhaps while they're not paying their taxes, they're actually current on their mortgage. Well, the bank can't foreclose on that basis. How many of you guys in a closing, as we're rattling through all the fees on a closing disclosure, have heard title service fee? Okay, how many of you have heard tax service fee? It's a very common fee from lenders. There's a tax service fee. And that service that they're providing is that they're supposedly going out every year and looking at your property to see if you're paying your taxes or not, so that they can intervene. So what they would do if they knew that, let's say I had a mortgage and I didn't pay my taxes, they would see that I'm getting, delinquent on those to the point where I could go to tax sale. They would come in and pay them and then add that back to the loan. It would get added back to the loan, just like forced placed insurance would get added back to the loan. They have the power to do that. The truth of the matter is that a lot of lenders completely miss it and they don't look.
Well, and I guess that's a good point of why there's escrow for taxes, is so that properties don't get in this situation in the first place.
Correct.
A quick question. So the tax sales that they do in August that's different than the auctions they do on the courthouse steps like every month, right?
Yeah, because those are foreclosed properties.
Okay. I was just checking.
Yeah. So the process for the tax sale properties is not a public auction in the sense that they are standing outside of the courthouse auctioning off this giant list of properties. It happens mostly electronically. You enter your bids through a computer system, you become a qualified bidder and you enter your bid through there. And that's how that works. It's more like eBay and less like standing on the courthouse steps. But
Watch out.
yeah.
Yes,
ma'am.
The homeowners are still in that property, I mean.
Yeah, so if Katie bought the property and the owners wouldn't leave, she can get the sheriff to remove them. Because that's kind of intrinsic with the collector's deed, is that the sheriff's gonna help you get any squatters out.
Okay,
So,
so just file for
yeah,
the peoples to get out and have it come and do it. Okay.
exactly.
So you may have already covered this because I was late getting here, so I apologize, but
You're fine.
you don't get the collector's deed until a year after you buy it, is that right?
Correct.
So I buy it at the courthouse, or I buy it in the tax sale, and then the people are still living in the property. I have to wait until a year to get that collector's deed before I can proceed getting them evicted.
That's correct.
Okay, so that, yeah.
That's correct, because they still have the right for that year redemption period.
So
Yes, and they
stay
can
away
trash
from
the
all of
house.
this.
Yeah, these properties are problematic. A lot of people look at the tax sale process and they see cheap purchase of property, and that's the attraction, right? Because you can get a very expensive or nice property in theory for not a lot of money, but you are also going to pay in a lot of headache. And for us as insurers, it's pretty cut and dry. We have 5 different underwriters at Meridian, and the answer is the same from all of them. And that is, we've got to get a deed from the tax defaulted owner. We've got to have a quiet title suit with personal service on all the parties, or you wait your 7 years and then we can do something.
Very interesting. Thank you.
You're very
And
welcome.
very well explained, I will say.
Well, thank you. It's not an easy process to explain.
Got it
I
down.
will turn the floor over to Katie, and she's gonna talk about 1031 exchanges.
Yay, it's a very exciting topic, I'm gonna tell you. But now that I have got my property via the tax sale, and I hang on to it for a while, get a quit claim deed, and I rent it out, and then I wanna buy a new property. So you have profits with this original property, and so you can turn it around and do a 1031 exchange. What is a 1031 exchange? Simply put, it's a method of exchanging investment properties that allows you to defer capital gains taxes. Also depreciation recapture and state taxes in most states. So it could be a very attractive offer for an investor. Let's see. If you own or manage investment or business property, you can exchange it with like-kind property to defer the capital gains taxes. Generally, they consider all real estate like-kind with other real estate. To be like-kind, it must be of the same nature or character, even if it is different in greater quality. So investment properties, rental properties could go to office complexes, and likewise, we'll get into a little bit of that later. You need to use a qualified intermediary. This is an unrelated third party who will escrow the funds during the exchange period. And then time limits and identification requirements are very important. So really, the 1031 exchange is super easy, but it does have a lot of rules. So use a qualified intermediary to follow all the rules and make sure you're doing things correctly so that you get all the tax benefits that you can. It is not enough for properties to be sold or purchased within the timelines. An actual exchange must take place in which one property is exchanged for another of like kind. Again, use a qualified intermediary for those purposes. There's no holding period requirement to hang on to the property. So I get it from the tax sale and I don't have to hold on to it for a year or 2 years or 5 years. As long as you show the intent of using it for a business purpose, then it can qualify.
I have a question. How about with personal, I have a client that just bought a house. She's going to sell her other house, but she's gonna wait till she gets fully moved in. And she's gonna make about $10,000 worth of profit. So when she goes to close that house, can she like roll that over for a capital gains type thing, or?
Was it her personal property or was it her personal residence?
And her husband had bought it for the granddaughter. And it was in the husband and wife's name. Husband passed away, so it's just in the wife's name. And now the grandmother, the wife, is using money that she has now, cash, and bought another piece of property to move her granddaughter into.
So, I mean, I think it would qualify as a personal residence because they're not actually they're not attempting to rent it to somebody. So no, the personal residence would not qualify, and then a vacation home won't qualify either. So, but in theory, if they rented it out for a time, then she could use the capital gains on that and roll it over. As long as it's the grandmother, the same taxpayer has to sell the property and then buy the new property. The qualifying factors for 1031 exchange were the property, again, must be like kind. It cannot be a personal primary residence or a vacation home. The same taxpayer who sells must also purchase. And when it comes to you all, the 1031 needs to be disclosed in the contract is when they're selling the relinquished property and then when they're buying the replacement property. Just a sentence in there saying that they intend to use the 1031.
Special agreements.
I just have a quick question about that.
Special agreements?
No, I wasn't doubting your special. I was just saying in the Missouri contract, it specifically says that the seller is agreeing in advance as part of the language in the contract to allow a 1031 exchange.
Okay.
So that's not enough,
That would be enough, yes. If they sign that, yes.
but does it have to be that it's specifically saying that they are doing it or?
No, because sometimes they don't qualify for it. They intend to and want to, but it doesn't work out for whatever reason. So that wouldn't nullify the sale.
Right, no, I understand that. I guess what my question is and I don't remember the verbatim language, but it's something about that the seller agrees to allow the buyer, if they choose to participate in a 1031 exchange, something. Does the requirement of the buyer to specifically put forward that they are in fact intending on using this as a 1031 exchange?
Yes, that would be met. However, in order to cover yourself, if you know that they intend to, I would put in there in the special agreement section that they do intend to.
Well, the reason why I even bring this up is, in my opinion, I think it takes away some of your negotiating power by telling the seller in advance in your contract offer that, hey, I'm doing a 1031 exchange. Cause it's almost like, you don't only have a specific time period. You gotta find a property, you gotta do this. It's almost like you're giving away the fact that you really need to buy this property. But I guess in that case, you could always get under contract and then do an amendment and state that you were doing the 1031
You could, but
exchange.
you wouldn't have to if that original language is in there. And I understand what you're saying. I think, you could argue that with, I have multiple replacement properties, because you can list, we'll go over the rules on what you can list as your replacement properties, but say 3 properties. You can list the 3 properties and then they don't know that you want to buy this one particularly, but you've got 2 others out there that
Right.
you're interested in.
Right.
But it would work having that language in there, and you don't have to add additional language necessarily, since that's in there.
Okay.
If you were selling 3 properties, you had to buy 3 properties?
No, we'll go over that though. You're jumping ahead just a little bit.
I wasn't even looking at this, and even down.
I know, but each one of these kind of has all these little separate intricacies that you kind of got to follow. So in order to, yeah, let's go over the exchange process overall, and then we'll get into the actual rules. Okay. So when you go to sell your relinquished property, you execute the sales contract on your relinquished property, and then this states that you mentioned the 1031 exchange within the contract. But like we talked about, since it's already mentioned in there, that will work. You want to get a qualified intermediary and then go ahead and provide the contact information to your closing agent. And then upon the close of that sale, then the proceeds will be wired to your qualified intermediary. So you don't touch your funds, and that's super important. Your timelines will start from that day, the day of close. So from the day of close, you have 45 days in order to identify your potential replacement properties. And then once you identify it, then you need to sign basically a sheet of paper, send that into your qualified intermediary and state that these are my possible replacement properties. And then in order to defer all the taxes, you want the value of your replacement property to be greater than the property you sold, which makes sense. But if it doesn't necessarily knock you out, if it's not greater, but you'll get excess money back, which you'll have to pay capital gains taxes on. So that's called boot. I don't know, you gotta pay extra money on boot. Okay, so then when you find your replacement property, you can use the exchange funds to close on the replacement property at any time during the 180 days. So you have 180 days from the close of your relinquished property to close on the replacement property. But you can close anytime within that 180 days. Again, you want to provide the QI contact information to your closing agent, and then they will send you all the documentation that you need in order. Basically, they do all of the extra paperwork and they handle the money. And then at the closing of your replacement property, your exchange will close, and then any remaining funds will be dispersed back to you. Okay, so for the 45-day rules, you have 45 days after the sale to identify your replacement property. The one thing to note here is that it must be unambiguous, and you need to either use a legal description or a physical address. You can't just say this house in Cobble Creek looks good, I want to identify that one, or this one, or this one. But for the 180 days, both of those time requirements are strictly enforced. You don't get an exception, you don't get an extra day. It's 45 days and 180 days. If you don't follow those, then it's kicked out and you'll have to pay all the capital gains taxes.
So what happens when you can't find anything in 45 days?
Then you
Too
get.
bad.
There's
Yeah.
SOL.
Yep.
Wow.
So you got
Which
it.
comes back to my point about the negotiations.
Right, and so in theory, you want to kind of plan it all out ahead.
Yeah.
You know, talk with your qualified intermediary if you can, or your sales agent, or not sales agent, but whoever, and try to get a plan in place of, you know, this is maybe where I'm thinking, I can go in this and kind of have it all laid out.
Kind of like he was saying, is it better to get under contract with something you're wanting to buy when, as soon as you get under contract with one you're selling?
Yes, I mean, I think if you can do it as close as possible, that would be good. Now, the risk of getting under contract with the one you want to buy is, what if your one that you're looking to sell doesn't sell? I mean, what if something comes back on the inspection and you got to throw a lot of money at that, and then, you know.
You have 45 days from the closing, right, to identify?
Yes.
But 45 days is plenty of time,
You
'cause-
get through the inspection period where you know it feels a little safer, and then
Yeah.
identify those properties, and you're still ahead of the
Yeah.
timeline.
Absolutely.
I'm the one who always looks at the worst of everything.
Well, that's good though. At least then
I
you're
hope I don't
prepared.
have to ever go that
And
direction.
then you're pleasantly surprised when it
Yes,
works out.
exactly. It's like, you know, it
Yes.
costs $500 to do this, but it'll cost you 50. Yeah.
This is true. So let's go to the identification rules, or how you can identify.
I
Yep.
have a question,
Yep.
Amy. She says she's
Hey
raising her.
Katie, it's Amy Hunsaker Williams.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, okay, good. I didn't know that was gonna be you there. So I guess I missed who the qualified intermediary can be. Is that somebody with a title company or an outside party?
It's going to be an outside third party and we use a qualified intermediary service for that. So there's different services and you can go through a title company, but yes, it has to be an unrelated third party.
So we can find it through you guys.
Yes.
Okay, because I was actually gonna ask.
We
that
do,
question.
yes, we do 1031s and then Renee Kender, who usually does these. You know, she has all the processes and she makes it super easy to follow.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay,
so just
thank you.
call us and
I've
we'll
done
do it.
1031s. I've done 1031s before with clients, but I hadn't heard that term. So thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely, anytime. Okay, so to identify, let's go. Okay, the identification rules. The main rule that's used is a 3-property rule, where you can identify 3 properties no matter what their value is. You don't have to close on all 3 properties. You can just close on 1, you can close on 2, but that is the one that's used, I'd say 85% of the time. There's what they call a 200% rule, which is you can identify any number of properties that have an aggregate value of not more than 200% of the relinquished property. So then they have a 95% exception, which states that any number of properties at any value you can purchase, provided that the taxpayer acquires 95% of the value they identified. So say you identify 5 properties and, you know, each of them are valued at $100,000, but you're only selling a $100,000 home. So in order to do the 95% exception, you've got to purchase at 95% of the value that you identified. I can't. So.
Will you run that by me one more time?
Yes, I know. Okay, so let's go over, okay, the 200, I know, it's very confusing. I'm sorry. I'm throwing this out there. The 200% rule allows you to identify more than 3 properties so long as their fair market value does not exceed 200% of the sales price of your relinquished property. But then the 95% rule states that should you identify the first 2 rules, should you over-identify on the first 2 rules, then you have to purchase 95% in value of what was identified. So if you identify 5 properties or more than 200% of the value of your original property, then you've got to purchase 95% in value of what you identified. Basically, what
Okay,
you-
so if you say you sold a house for $100,000,
Yeah.
the one that you're wanting to do the 1031 exchange on, and you identify 3 properties that are also 100,000 each, so $300,000 of
So you
properties,
only
you're over the
identify-
200% rule.
If you use a 3-property rule, doesn't matter. That's why most people use it. It's the
Right.
easiest and you
Oh,
can
okay.
close
So you
on,
wouldn't go
it
find
doesn't
5.
matter the value.
You wouldn't go find $500,000 properties.
Right, but if you really wanted to and then go that, then you have a couple extra steps that you'd have to follow through with in order to qualify.
All right, so if they stick to 3 properties,
You're good.
these rules don't apply, but if they don't stick to 3 properties, you're saying they can't identify more than 200% of the sold property value. So in
Yes,
this case, $200,000.
right,
And if they do exceed
200%.
200%, so that, which they did, because they identified 3 properties at 300,000. Now they have to buy 95% of $300,000.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's why everyone sticks to the 3
Yes.
property
Makes
rule.
it easier and you can,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, this may sound really stupid, so just follow me.
Okay.
Let's say you identify your 3 properties and all 3 get sold and become unavailable, but you're still within that 45-day timeline.
You can identify other properties.
Thank you.
Yes,
So you can drop the 3.
do what?
If all else fails. just call
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's where you call Renee and she'll help you out and walk you through it. If this one falls through, if these 3 fall through, then yes.
So if one or all 3 of the properties that you identify are off the table,
Mhm.
then you just cross off those and you just need to end at 45 days with only 3 properties still on the list, is that
Yes,
in essence?
that's correct.
Okay.
Whew. We're big thinkers here.
I know, it's outside my box.
You're like, no, I'm just gonna
This
read
is
it.
great, but please stop. And that's really about all I have. I know, I think the one important thing to remember though is if a client mentions 1031 exchanges, is sometimes it can make you nervous or you can worry about it, but you don't have to because you just call Renee and she uses a qualified intermediary and gets everything set up. And you are more likely to close 2 sales or 3 sales as opposed to just the 1 sale. So it could be good, yes.
What's the difference between like a vacation home and trying to do like an Airbnb, or is there a difference?
Yes, there is a difference, and I'm not sure the exact rules, but if you're doing an Airbnb and you are renting it out, I don't know if it's more than 6 months. That used to be.
There's some kind of a rule about that.
There is, that you have to rent it out for more than 6 months of the year. That might not be the exact 6-month timeline, but there is a certain rule that you do. But if you do rent it out for the majority of it, then it should qualify. But we need
Does
to
it have
check
to be
into it.
offered to be rented or it actually has to be rented?
It does not, you just have to try to rent it. It's the intent of the taxpayer is what's important. Did they buy it just to flip it? In that case, it wouldn't qualify, but if they bought it to try to rent it, and they tried and weren't successful, after a year period, 2 years, whatever, then they could qualify.
This is a really dumb question for real this time. Okay, so I know once you 1031, you always 1031 that property, that money, right? So if I
mean, you don't always have to.
Well, you can pay your taxes on it and then
Right.
un-1031 it.
Right.
Okay, cool. So let's say I 1031 into an investment property and 3 years down the road, I decide I want to live there. So it's no longer an income property, it's a personal property. And I live in that property for 2 years as a primary residence. Am I out of the 1031 or because I purchased it with the 1031, I'm gonna have to pay those taxes?
The 1031, it matters like when you sell it. So if you've been living there as a personal
As long as
residence,
you get your 2 years.
yeah,
Okay.
I think, wait, as long.
You don't even want to know where my mind has been this entire time. When he was
It's-
talking, she said, I'm gonna stop paying my taxes. I was like, no, ma'am, no, you're not. No, you're not.
One of our classes, the only way out of a 1031 was death.
Oh,
Who would do that out of a 1031? I thought Renee had shared. Well, don't go there, don't go there, please. If someone had passed away that owned the property. Am I wrong? Only because in my
I'm
mind.
not
had-
sure where, you very well, I'm not sure where you're going with that though, where.
Only because in my mind, I had to ask the question of how you get into a 1031 and how you get out of one. My example was I won the lottery and I went out and I bought a property that I wanted to turn into a 1031. And then how do I get out of it? And it was like, well, basically I had to pass away and then I could either give that to my children and it still turned into a 1031.
Okay.
That was my scenario of.
Well, and I think to that point, you make a good point though, once you turn over the funds to the qualified intermediary, until you close that second property, you cannot access your funds. You have to wait that 180 days in order to get your money back, so.
Unless you're gonna pay taxes on it, which
If you-
paying taxes is like that, so.
Once you enter it though, you have to wait, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably it. If you die, you can.
Yeah.
I'm like, I swear I had to die. I was like, okay, I don't want to get there. So, yeah, the good thing is on your front page here is Renee's contact information. Any questions?
Wow,
That was
thank
good.
you.
That was good.
Katie's on there as well. She did an amazing job. I know she was very nervous to do this day and you did.
Oh, she did good.
Oh, thanks, yes. This is Renee's domain and you know, so I do the legal contracts and stuff like that. So I could talk about that all day long.
Thank
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, you get me again, because Joe's not here. One thing I'll add on 1031 exchanges is that 180 days that Katie was talking about, that is a hard and fast rule. If you don't close in 180 days, the party's over. So that is a line in the sand. If you guys have people come to you and they're looking to purchase properties and they disclose to you that I've got a 1031 or, I'm gonna have a 1031 and I wanna look for properties as replacement properties, is it a good idea to take them to see properties that are under construction?
No.
No is the correct answer. You would not believe how many 1031s that we have that go south because the property isn't finished and they can't close on it. So, because stuff always happens, right? But let's talk about people who are deceased. How many people have had a deal where they've had dead people to deal with in their transaction? It's
My mom.
lots and lots of fun. So I'm going to talk about non-probate transfers for a minute before we talk about the probate process. In Missouri, the way that we did that for a long, long time was through a vehicle called a life estate. Have any of you dealt with a life estate before? They're still used and can still be used even though we have beneficiary deeds today. So in a life estate situation, I own a piece of property and I want to give that property to Garrett. I picked on Katie earlier, so now it's Garrett's turn. I want to give the property to Garrett. So what I do is I do a deed from myself to Garrett, but in the deed, I reserve a life estate for myself. What does that mean? It really essentially means that the house is still mine until I die, and I can mortgage it and I can sell it and I can do whatever I want to with that property until my death. And then upon my death, it would go to Garrett. That also means that, I can inherit or cause bad things to happen that would cloud the title to the property, like a tax lien or a judgment from a court case or whatever. And all of that's Garrett's baggage when I'm dead. But life estates were the way that we transferred properties outside of probate in Missouri for years and years and years. And then Missouri got on the bandwagon with transfer on deed, death, or beneficiary deed. Transfer on death deed or beneficiary deeds, and they passed a law to allow those in Missouri. So now primarily we see beneficiary deeds. So I do a beneficiary deed and I say upon my death, Garrett inherits my property, and then that deed sits there. It doesn't become active until I die. And then once I die, the property would be his. It may sound very similar, but the life estate process was much more convoluted and much more difficult because they would bury that language in the deed that looked like a warranty deed, whereas a beneficiary deed is a standalone instrument specifically designed to do that. Beneficiary deeds cannot be used on properties that are owned by a trust, that are owned by an LLC, or are owned by a corporation. It has to be an individual person who is the grantor on the beneficiary deed.
I have a question. With the LLC part, mine's LLC, how do I keep some other fingers being in my business? I want to give everything to my two kids. So how do I?
So if you own a property in an LLC, the correct way to give that property to your children or whomever is to put the language in your operating agreement that they would get the property upon your death. You don't put it in a beneficiary deed because a beneficiary deed is, again, it's devised under the non-probate transfer law, which really only applies to individuals. And if you think about it, an LLC doesn't die. That corporate entity continues even though you've died, the entity is still there, just like a trust or a corporation. It keeps going. There's no death of that. And so because there's no death, then there would be no transfer. For title insurers, we consider that a beneficiary deed is triggered by operation of law on the day the person dies. So that's when it happens. Now, we don't always know that the person is dead. right? Because for us, our place is the land record. We go to the courthouse, we search the records, we don't find any hint in there that the person is dead. So that's why oftentimes you'll see us requiring a death certificate or wanting to do a death recital on a deed to explain that somebody is deceased. And we're just trying to button up that process and put it on record for the world that indeed I'm dead and indeed Garrett now owns this property. So that is essentially the way to transfer outside of probate. When somebody dies and there is no beneficiary deed, what do? Well, we have kind of a rule in the title world, and that is if we are within a year of the death, we require a probate. That person's interest in the property would have to be probated. Their heirs would have to be determined, and then the property could be transferred by either, typically it's a personal representative of the estate. Two types of probates. There's a supervised probate, which inherently all probates, when they start, are supervised probates. That means that the court is going to supervise every single step of that process. They're going to have to approve everything that is done. The aside to that is if all of the heirs agree that they don't want that much court activity and they trust one person to be the personal representative, they can all sign a document and the court will change the probate to an unsupervised probate, which means that that personal representative, once they're appointed by the court, can pretty much do whatever they want. They can go out and they can do contract with you guys and they can sign a closing and we get a personal representative's deed from them and all that without any court interference. But in a supervised probate, we do have to ask the court for everything. So there's proof to the court that the house is being sold, the property is being sold at a reasonable market price, that it's not a fire sale or it's not, some kind of a side deal where, I'm going to sell it to Garrett for $50,000, but he's really going to give me $100,000 because I'm going to get some more money after the closing kind of thing. They get involved in all of that kind of stuff because they want to make sure that whatever heirs have been identified in that process are protected. They're trying to make sure that everybody gets the most money that they possibly can. The downside of the probate process is that you need an attorney, and so that's expensive, and the courts are really backed up, so it takes a lot of time. It's not fast. If you can get in there and you can get an unsupervised probate, you can move that a lot quicker because you're not waiting on the court to sprinkle holy water on any of your paperwork, and we can just zoom right on through closing once that personal representative is agreed upon. The other option inside of probate is affidavit of small estate. In Missouri, we have a rule that if the value of all of the stuff that is in the estate is less than $40,000, you can file an affidavit of small estate, and then the court will go, well, there's really not a lot of money to deal with here. So who are the heirs? Let's put it on this affidavit. And usually whoever is the affiant in that case, they become the person who's empowered to sign, or we get all the heirs to sign. It just sort of depends on the situation. Obviously, in today's universe, $40,000 isn't a lot of money. But, if you have a house that's worth, I don't know, let's say the house is worth $100,000 and there's a mortgage on it and the mortgage balance is $80,000. And so really you've only got 20,000 equity in the house, and then, they live like pack rats or whatever, and they don't really have any nice things. Maybe it's not $40,000, and you can do that because any money that's owed on the property does come off of that total. So it is an option for people. We see a lot of them in Missouri. There are a lot of pitfalls with them, though. I just had a deal in Joplin last month where a woman applied for a small estate because her father had died. He owned two properties. Neither one of them had any kind of mortgage on them. But she put on the affidavit that the first house was worth his property, personal property, was worth $500. So that came off of there. And then she put the first house was worth $39,000. And the second property she listed at the value at $500. So, well, actually $4.99 is what she put on there. So she was right under the line, right? And she went through the whole process with the court with that affidavit of small estate and then came to us with a real estate contract on that second property for $65,000. So what's wrong with that picture? Could we close that? Mm-mm. Because she obviously committed fraud. So, you know, we do have to watch for those sorts of things, but people are very creative what they try. So we will tell you on our title commitment, if we are aware that somebody is deceased, we'll let you know that a probate needs to be opened and we can figure out whether we can get that on the fast track or the slow track. If it's been more than 1 year since the death of the party entitled to the property, we do a process called affidavits of heirship. Where we essentially go to the remaining people who are identified as heirs and we get information and we do a document that's an affidavit, but it's really a story of the family. And it tells who owned the property and that they died and who their children are. And then any of those children who are still living, or, you know, we will list out. If there are deceased children, we may have to, you know, have another layer in the affidavit, but essentially on that page, we identify all of the heirs in the process and we get deeds from all of them and their spouse if they're married. And that's the way we transfer that property from the deceased person's name to the new buyer. Is we prove out who all of the heirs are. We don't take one person's word, by the way. We always get at least 2 affidavits. But then we get deeds from all of those parties and their spouses, and that's how we manage that. That process can get crazy. I just finished one again in Joplin, oddly, that the affidavit of heirship was 8 pages long and there were over 35 heirs. Yeah. Now, imagine, because in theory, we're saying all of these people are now the owners of the property. And when you get a list that's like that, how many of those people are going to have a tax lien or a judgment or other things that attach to the property because they have an interest in it? So it gets really, really convoluted. We can in Missouri go back to probate courts and have what's called a determination of heirs done, where we ask the court to do that, because if the family can't agree on who the heirs are, or we get a sense that maybe they're trying to hide something from us, we might go that option as well, where we want the court to do it because we don't want to be responsible for just taking a couple of people's words who might be trying to, you know, defraud a black sheep of the family or something like that. But you can always look at our title commitment on Schedule A, where we tell you who we believe to be entitled. Because we're going to tell you there, you know, the names of the folks that we think should be there. And if you're not dealing with those folks, then you may want to ask questions and find out if maybe somebody's deceased. Because the sooner we get started on those projects, the better. It's often difficult to track people down if we're going to go through the affidavit of heirship process specifically. It's hard to find them and then also to get them to agree to sign documents and stuff because they may not really understand that they have a dog in the hunt at all. Any questions on deceased parties? Yes, ma'am?
I'm actually gonna get remarried next year, but I don't want him to have his fingers in any of my stuff. I want my kids to have it also. What do I need to do now before I exhibit this premarital property? The title, the actual title of my trailer house is to my son as a TOD.
Okay.
The land, which is 12 acres, is TOD 3 acres with the mobile home and 10 acres to my other son as a TOD. Is that suffice enough, or can he come in after something happens to me and I pass away? He like, no, and I want to make sure.
So Missouri law allows spouses to have pretty much an automatic marital interest in property. It's not a vested interest, it's a marital interest. So if you don't add him to the deed to your property, his only interest in the property would be marital. Would he have some right to some of the property? Yes, he would. The solution for you would be to have him along with you, execute a beneficiary deed. But that beneficiary deed needs to be very, very specifically worded, because you don't want you and him as the grantors and then your kids as the grantees. Why? Because the deed only triggers at the death of the last of those two people. So he would be signing simply to acknowledge and agree to the provisions of the transfer upon your death. And the deed needs to specifically say that the transfer would happen on your death, not his death. So that way, he would have essentially signed away any right that he would have had to the property that would have endured after your,
So probably just go get a prenup? Yes.
Well, I mean,
Well, I'm going
yeah,
out anyways.
the beneficiary deeds can be done properly. It's just that you have to think about it. I can't tell you how many situations we have. I mean, Katie and I talk about them not infrequently, where people have done a beneficiary deed and it is exactly that situation. The female partner wanted everything to go to these kids, which were hers, maybe from a prior marriage. They didn't have any kids in common, but they put the two of them on there as grantors and they just left it. And so by operation of law, that deed is not triggered until he dies. So, she may die, but let's say he lives another 15 years, those kids are out until he's dead, unless the deed is properly crafted. So you need a good attorney to do that for you.
I already told him all about this. He said he's perfectly fine with it, but he has his own property and
Sure.
he's got his property
Sure.
being deeded to his kids
Sure.
and,
You can't, the bad thing, if you want to call it a bad thing in Missouri, is that you can't undo marital interest in property. It's very difficult to undo it.
Yeah.
We have a lot of documents that we use. I'm sure you all have been at closings where they've signed a marital waiver,
Yeah.
maybe for the purchase of property. Well, the marital waiver has to do with agreeing to purchase and agreeing to that purchase money mortgage that's going on to the property. But at the end of the day, you could sign 50 quitclaim deeds to your husband and that marital interest just keeps coming back sticking to you. So you can't get rid of it that easily.
Yeah, because we're gonna have property in our name, that's gonna be our family home
Sure,
in Texas, but then
sure.
I have mine here in Missouri, first
Sure.
come back, and he has his, it's in Texas too. So we just wanna make sure that
Yeah.
this is premarital stuff here,
Yeah.
and he goes
Do
where we want it to go. And
Do
our
a
marital
well-crafted
stuff
beneficiary deed, you'll be fine.
is for all four, all four kids and
He
us.
signs, yeah. Any questions on deceased property owners? Thank you all for your attention today and great questions. That's awesome. While you've got us, any random title questions?
I had, when my mom passed away in May, I was our DTP.
DPOA?
Yes, that one. And when I did that, I didn't have my 2 letters of incompetency and they still took it and let me close without her payer. Is that gonna come back and bite me in the butt?
Well, it depends on how your power of attorney was written.
I had to have 2
You had to
letters.
have 2?
Yeah,
Well, that was their bad if they didn't ask for them.
because I told her, I said, I don't have my 2 letters yet. When I was in nursing home.
Sure.
dementia.
Sure.
I still don't have my 2 letters yet, but I've got to get this closed. And I knew what the answer was supposed to be, but I didn't say anything because I had to get it closed,
Right.
So I just didn't want that to come back and bite me in the butt, next year or whatever the case may be.
Did you get the letters ultimately?
Yes.
Okay, well, I wouldn't lose those.
I
just
don't know, it felt
Because if they come back, I mean, the answer is if they're gonna come back to you and say, you fraudulently used the power of attorney because, she wasn't proven to be incompetent, you could pull those out and say, yes, here are the letters.
She's passed away now.
Yeah, okay. Well, but still, I mean, that would be your answer.
I have them, they're all in my safe.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you guys so much. We really, really appreciate it.
Hey.
Can't eat them all.
They're from SNL and Republic, if you ever had them.
What, SNL?
Yeah.
Garrett got up this morning and made them. What are you talking about?
I did
Don't be
not
so
make them.
bashful.
You have a chef hat on?
No, those are,
No,
those ones are.
These guys are awesome. So thank you. Somebody I was talking to yesterday, Cass, was it you about their calculator? Was that, who was I talking? Oh my gosh, you guys have some kind of calculator on your.
that was me.
Like, no, I don't know anything of what you're talking about. But you guys, on your website, you have some kind of closing cost calculator and a bunch of other different things.
Yeah.
Check it out. It's super awesome.
When you do use that, there is no
Sorry.
asterisk fees. So what your prices you put in, that is gonna be, other than you might have a few dollars off on your recording documents, depending on how many pages that's going to be. But there's no other like asterisks as far as.
Do you have any companies in
you-
Texas or anything, or Meridian, a sister company or anything in Texas?
If you scroll up, right back up there,
You wanna
it
drive?
should, do what? Well, no, it's right there, so yeah, so you just click right here. That will take you to the calculator and you can fill all those.
I heard that. I didn't
So-
know. And I thought that was the coolest thing
There
ever.
was another button back there that says IntelliPay. You can do your earnest money online.
Oh, that's
Deposit,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, so many options, guys, so many options. Awesome. How many locations do you guys have now?
Busy Stroll came out and listed 30 some. That is because we are in a lot of different offices, like in Kansas City area, and they include those, but around here we are at 23. We just opened in Harrison, Arkansas. We are next locations, hopefully really soon, is going to be Republic and Kimberling City. And we are in the process of working on going into Mount Vernon right now.
Woo,
Right on.
awesome.
So,
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leave these for- Yeah, we'll leave them for people and then I'll scan them and the rest of our stuff.
all right, sounds good. And if you have any teams that want us to come in and do this? just give us a shot. We'd absolutely love that.
Okay, we'll get you back on for,
Right.
they have a plethora of classes to teach and they're so great, so.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome, guys. Okay, well, for my people who are doing 75 hard, how's it going so far? Woo-hoo. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. Nate, did I pair you with somebody? Okay, I thought so. All right, good deal. If you're not doing 75 hard, take some of those things from it and implement them into your daily routine. Just start somewhere, okay? It doesn't have to be 75 hard, it can be 5 soft, whatever you want it to be, okay? 5 soft.
Hey, hold on.
I have a soft.
When I signed up for 75 hard, I didn't realize there was an option for 5
There
soft.
really is. Do both, honestly. I think it sounds like you could do both. I think it's gonna be great. Don't forget, guys, every day you have the opportunity to be the cash winner if you give me your signed listing agreement, okay? You guys are doing amazing things. Just keep doing it. This is the time of year where people really start to kind of like, okay, I've worked so hard. I'm gonna go hang out, take my Thanksgiving time off. Next class, we're gonna talk about flex time and intentional time, focus time and flex time in your calendar. You're a business owner. This is your jam. You're going to do it how you want to do it. But how much better is the holiday season when you can come out of it still being in production versus going into it, being well rested, having that fun, and then coming out of it going, oops, where do I go now? You don't want to start over. So let's be super intentional for what our time is going to look like in the next 2 months. You guys have earned your time with your family. By all means, do it. You guys are business owners that you come and go as you please. Go shopping for Christmas. Go do the things you want to do. But take your calendar very serious and put in there flex time and focus time. Earn your time. Fair? We're going to talk about that a lot next time. All right. Also, tomorrow is Thursday. And we're doing our CMA workshop down here. And then Friday is Lead Gen and Nixa. I'd be lying if I said I was impressed with your guys' attendance there, okay? I get Cassie, I get Sarah, I get a handful of people.
I live an hour away.
Not even a handful.
I'm not talking to you, but if it is in your realm of availability to show up at 8 a.m., I promise you it will be better.
Can you go Zoom?
So the reason I wasn't zooming is because you can't zoom a Zoom. And we were zooming in for the recon call.
Unless you're a Spice Girl.
You don't want to hear it. But what I would love is if you haven't come try it out. I would really like to have that time for you guys to practice and do the lead gen, right? If you were in Paulina's Ignite yesterday, we have well, actually, we have 3 jobs. The third one's follow your calendar, okay? So follow your calendar, lead generate, and lead follow up. Okay, I've been talking to some of you about this quite in detail. There is a difference between generating for leads and following up with leads. Lead follow-up is your database. It's the people who you already know and that you're just doing care calls or touches or things like that with, right? It's even the people that you need to get on the calendar and find their sense of urgency, identify that timeline. Lead generate is go fill your pipeline, go fill your database with people you don't know yet. These are your new, old, okay? Your calendar should look like this: lead generate, lead follow-up, appointments. If you don't have an appointment, either go to a training or say it out loud. That's right. So simple, it's scary. It's so hard, it's also scary, okay? And that's okay, that's why you're here today. All right, friends, any questions, comments, or concerns? Cool, keep it to yourself. What I'd like to see is you guys go out and do big things, okay? Are you my shining stars? Yes, especially Nate. Nate's the big winner. Did you check your Venmo today, pal?
I told you I didn't want your money.
He goes, I don't want your money. I was like, but that's the game. I said, take it, or I will. I'm a $50 investment into your listing, so let's get that sucker live.
So, just so everyone knows, it is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,218 square feet in Rogersville. Wooden privacy fence. It has carpet only in the bedrooms. It's got LVP in the dining room and hallway, or in the living room and hallways, and then like tile looking vinyl in the kitchen and bathrooms, and it will be $215.
Ooh.
That's why I was oohing, because I'm like, I know what that's gonna go for. That's
What's your projected live timeline?
I want to go live on a Thursday or Friday, and we're aiming for next Thursday or Friday.
I love that. Thanksgiving special.
There you
Yeah.
go, Black Friday special.
It'll be the week before Thanksgiving, but yeah.
Why?
It's a pre-Black
I mean,
Friday special.
we'll be under contract before Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely,
you
you will be.
Yes, you will. That's fantastic. So think about that. Do you have a Rogersville 3-bed, 215 buyer in your pipeline somewhere? If not in your pipeline, in your database somewhere, this would be a really good reach out. Hey, I just heard about this new listing coming. Seems like a steal. I'd love to get you in first.
Why so cheap?
Competitive.
Why so
it's not
cheap? That's what it should be.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
It's priced
Because I've seen
appropriately.
pictures and stuff, you know, and is it dated or, I mean.
I mean, it was built in 2007, so I mean, it's dated to 2007, but
It's a competitive price in
Yes.
today's market, and it's, if I know you, it's priced very well.
Oh, that is, that's it.
Awesome. That thing will go really fast. So start thinking about that, guys. Also,
Hey, Nate, could you,
Yes.
this is Sarah. Could you send me the address on that?
ooh, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that. I'm kidding, Sarah. Yes, I will.
Thank
Love
you.
it. Love it. I love this culture. I love how safe it is here. You guys are awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, friends, go take on the world. All right, go do big things. And I'll see you Thursday.
We know
or
what it
Friday.
is.
What is that?
What about this?
Next time.
Okay.
Were you
Okay.
prepared this time?
Yeah.
Hey, I do want to share one thing, and I'm sorry, Cass, I didn't mean to.
It's all right.
I thought we were doing that next time.
No,
Do you want to do it this time?
it won't take very long.
We'll do it.
I mean, I had a whole class planned for that, but come on up.
Oh, well, we can do it.
This will be good. Sit.
We can have more people. Okay, go ahead, Nate. 'cause-
Well, mine's just real quick while you're doing that. So not this bold, but last bold, one of the topics that got brought up is during a listing presentation to offer options to your seller on how much commission they want to pay you. And the option that I presented was 6%, 7%, or 8%. And I'm giving 3% to the buyer's agent. And I wanted to try it, but I just never really found the right time to try it on a listing, but I'm like, I'm gonna be there, I'm already gonna have the paperwork, I'm gonna sit and talk to them, and I'm gonna present it, and I actually printed it out, it was already typed up, you know, I put them in
The menu of
DocuSign.
services
So-
almost.
Yes,
Okay.
so, but I didn't present a menu, but I just had the listing agreement already typed up with all the info in DocuSign, but printed for them to sign, and I was a little bit worried about it, so I'm like, I'm gonna have this one with options, and I also printed one that just had 6%, and I'm like, I'm just gonna see how it goes. and see which one of these I pull out. But we had really good rapport and talked and everything and talked. So I presented that and I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal. I'm gonna share my commission with a buyer's agent, which will be 3% commission. Is what I will offer to share. And then your options for the commission overall are 6, 7, or 8. And I said, I'll let you circle the one that you feel fits best and then need both of you to sign, and 7% is what they picked.
Whoa.
So they will always
That
pick
is
the middle.
awesome. So that's exactly how, what was his name? What was that bold instructor's name?
Darren?
Darren, yeah, that's how Darren had it. He's like, circle which one, and basically 6 is the normal level of service, and then bump it up and bump it up, and I think that's fantastic.
And before I got to that point, obviously I sold myself and I explained all the different things that I will do, and so.
So with each different percentage, did you give a different level of service, or you just gave them your service that you're gonna do and?
No, and I mean, eventually, to me though, I don't like the idea of that, cause it's almost like if you pick 6%, you're gonna get shitty service. That's what I read it. If someone told me that and they're like, okay, I'll sell your house and for 6%, I'm not doing jack squat, but putting on the MLS. And if you give me 7, 8 or whatever, I'll do all these extra things. I'll be like, well, that's kind of crappy. I'd rather just someone know I'm gonna do all these things. I'm gonna be a rock star. And then here's your options. And I think it goes back to his point as well, is that when people like on a tip at a restaurant,
Yeah.
like you're presented 3 options, you almost feel like the stingy jerk if you pick the bottom option. So I just feel like that's kind of subliminal. And at the end of the day, I really am gonna do a great job selling their house, and the 1%, I'm probably gonna more than make up for that versus a lot of other agents that would list it.
I
So
love
it's
that.
good, and I'm good, and.
I'm really impressed that you
All is
took
well.
that leap and went and did it.
Well, and so I also started that same type of leap when I started charging people a $300 transaction fee. Again, I felt really nervous about it at first, and it was a situation like this, where if I'm gonna try something new, I wanna be face to face with someone, where if it seems like it's going sideways, I can recover without just trying to send it over, a phone call or an email or something. And so I thought, well, if there's ever a chance to try it, here it is. And so anyways, I'll be doing that going forward.
I love it. I love it. Where did this lead come from?
It was a referral from another friend of mine.
Even better.
Super
Good for you.
So what do we put on there for the fee? This is just the straight 300, so it covers my onward and.
Yeah.
All that
So
stuff?
that's in the flat fee section on
Okay.
page 1. Yeah, and then it's right there. You would put like your 250 or your 300 or whatever your transaction fee is. And then right above that, it's got your percentage that you're intending to make. So
And then also though, on that point is I don't use a transaction coordinator. I'm too much of a control freak, but I still charge someone a transaction fee, because if you're getting it and you're farming out part of your transaction to someone else, why do I not get it? Because I'm gonna do it all myself. So I just simply say it's a transaction fee. It helped offset the cost of the transaction and paperwork, and then leave it at that. No one ever has balked at that. So if you're not doing it, you should definitely start doing that.
I told them because I'm not that smart and the smart people have to get paid.
I say
I don't know
that.
that I would say that to
That-
someone.
Well,
You don't want me in your
mine.
paperwork. How about that?
Yeah.
Nate knows his value.
Yeah.
It's abundantly clear Nate knows his value, which is why he has 0 problems negotiating. Cass, you're another great example of a menu of services. I will do these wonderful things at this, and I will do these extra things at this. Know your value, know what you're worth, and then we won't have these conversations on, well, I took the listing at 4%.
And I had this conversation with Mike Brown the other day. If someone wants to do 5% because of whatever reason, okay, choose the things that you don't want me to do.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like
You choose 3 things that I don't do. So maybe I don't do professional photography. Now I'm gonna take a picture with my cell phone. And I do have an eye, but I don't have a house eye. So like what things are not going to be done by me to lower that compensation?
And
It's compensation because it's paid for work.
you're doing a lot of work before you ever get paid, friends. Also, nobody will ever judge you for going, bless you, for 5%. Okay, this is your business to run it how you should. However, know your value and don't be giving away free ice creams out of the back of the
Well-
truck. Cass, come on up.
Oh, while she's walking up, one other thing, I have done one listing and I did it for 4.5%. It was my very first listing. And it was a referral from a friend and their family needed help, blah, 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 because they needed to sell it to pay for medical bills, all this stuff. It was the worst transaction of my life that I have not followed up with them one single time. If they called me, I would say, yes, I'll be happy to find someone to refer you to, and I would not help them again. And I still gave the buyer's agent 3%, so I got 1.5%. Worst transaction ever, never doing it again. And then what was funny is, the reason I did it is to help the friend's family out who needed help with medical bills. Guess what? When they showed up at closing, they had bought a new car that they showed up at closing. I'm like, alrighty then. So anyway,
Not
be
scripted.
careful how you sell yourself short.
So this is my friend Cass. Cass just went to the Greater Springfield Board. What was this?
Well, this was, it's part of the ambassadors.
Ambassadors. And she had shared some of the information with me that she had learned, and I said, oh my gosh, I'd love for you to share that. I didn't know you would have it all ready today,
I'm ready.
so if she's ready, we're ready. She's got great info
It's-
for you.
It's not sexy, but it is very, very interesting. And this was Code of Ethics. So, just a couple of things. Have you guys looked at this in a while? All the
No, because I'm an ethical
articles.
person.
I still
Has
read every
it
night
been
as I'm falling
revised?
Is that
asleep.
what, yeah, that's your
Yeah.
going to sleep stuff?
Just have it on record.
Has it been revised since,
January 1st.
January 1/23. It's this
so,
year.
yeah, I went to the GSBR.
The orientation. deal.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, they probably went through a lot of it. It's really interesting when you read it and the verbiage that is used, and especially if you go, I wonder if I can. This will tell you if you can, what you're able to do. And so just reading through it, the articles, there's 3 articles if I remember correctly. Let's see. No, there's a lot more articles, they just don't have them on here, I guess, so they're shortened. So the standard of practice, the obligation of realtors to preserve confidential information as defined by state law provided by their clients in the course of any agency relationship or non-agency relationship recognized by law after termination of agency relationships or any non-agency relationships recognized by law. Realtors shall not knowingly, during or following the termination of professional relationships with their client, reveal confidential information, use confidential information of clients to the disadvantage, use confidential information of clients for the realtor's advantage or the advantage of a third party. So what does that mean, you guys?
Don't disclose confidential information, period.
Of who?
Your clients, past clients.
Even after the contract is over, so we have an expiration date, you still have a duty to keep their secrets. So, and you can't come back and use it later. You can't go over and tell Shanna, oh, you know what? I worked with them 2 years ago and they got a lot of money in the bank. You know, those are the kinds of things, and you don't think about that because you think, oh, I'm done. We're not under contract. You know what I mean? You think that contract is the end of it. And we kind of put a line down and we're like, okay, now we're all separate entities. We're not. We never are not separate entities. What if you had an unamicable split? Like we fired someone, we fired the client.
Still applies.
Still applies. So what if we were just talking in the office to each other about, wow, the client always wants to price too high and it'll never sell.
Sure.
That's not confidential.
It's public. I mean, they haven't listed this. You can see what's listed at.
But is it at the advantage of the client or the advantage of the other agents of the office?
I would say you could reword it in a way that my past experience was that the price that we ended up listing it at, it didn't sell.
That would be a material fact, so that's okay. But let's say you walk in the door and you're really just you're just venting and you don't think about it, you're just venting and go, oh, my client will not lower the price of his house. It's way too high. We've been on the market for 90 days and they will not lower the price of their house and it's just priced too high. And someone hears you. Let's say the receptionist hears you and someone calls the office about that house.
And they say, well, you know, I hear that it's priced too high, so you may have some room to negotiate that.
True story, friends.
Oh my gosh, are you serious? Wow.
Yeah. But you don't know, because you didn't tell, we were out here having this conversation, you didn't tell Shanna that that was confidential information. Does Shanna know it's confidential information? She should, she's licensed, she's a realtor. What if there's someone else that brand new? Brand new, 3 days in, and we're in training class and we're talking about something that we're having a struggle with. And then they go out and find a buyer for that and be like, oh, I think we can get this one. Yeah. So that was a really interesting one, and I like, oh my gosh, because I've done it. I've done it thinking I'm venting, when in fact I am releasing information on my client that I have no business doing, because there's no telling what could happen on the other side of the words coming out of my mouth. So be super careful. If you need to vent, go straight to Shanna, because she is not in production.
Talk to your dog.
Talk to your dog,
I'm
talk to your
a bolt.
significant other.
But she's also still a licensed agent.
She is,
I am,
But
but you can
it's-
make that choice,
yeah.
100%. Kettle, I'm just kidding. No, I am a licensed agent, but I am out of production. I'm not in production. I have, all my clients get referred back out to you guys if I have any, or I just ignore them. Just kidding, I really don't. But let's say Tori's in the room. Tori's not technically really in production, but you know. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, so that one was, a really, and we're gonna go over a couple of actual ones that happened. Let me find my other ones that we went through.
I do like to invest in real estate, so be careful. It'll be hers, it'll be hers, but like, I did hear you say something. Shanna, I'm just kidding. No.
Okay. Realtors, in response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating brokers, shall, with the seller's approval, disclose the existence of offers on property. Where disclosure is authorized, realtors shall also disclose, if asked, whether offers were obtained by the listing licensee, another licensee in the listing firm, or a cooperating broker. So first, the listing agent has to have gotten permission to release the offers. And that's the second line. First is motivating factors. Second is tell buyers agencies, sellers agents that
The
you
presence
can
of
release
offers,
the present, yeah. They don't have to tell you they have offers. You can call and ask, you go to listing. They don't have to tell you, but you can ask, you can say, hey, can you tell me about your offers? And they can either say yes or no. Now, if the seller said they could and they don't, are they violating the ethics? Yes, because they let them know. We can also ask if the offers are coming from in-house. I know.
All right, backtrack
Yeah.
one spot. You're saying that when, in the listing agreement, when a seller gives you permission to disclose offers, you're saying that once they give that permission, then you're required
If
to
asked,
disclose?
if asked.
I've never read into it like that. I always thought that it just gave you the permission to do it. That made sense, but not that we were obligated.
If
do
someone
it.
asks you the question, you have to answer if you were given permission. And that's where it says, if you were authorized to do so.
Which that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just didn't realize that was the case. But-
Yeah, if it, and here's the thing, so, and then we ask, you know, it's a Murney selling, a Murney listing agent, and it's a Murney offer. It's a Grady listing, it's a Grady offer. So we can find that information to determine whether we are gonna be able to have any skin in the game. Because that could be a factor that stops us from getting anywhere. And it's information, but they don't have to tell us, we have to ask for it. So anytime you guys are negotiating or finding out any information, ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can to get that information, and if they can tell you, they'll tell you. They're obligated to tell you. I didn't know about the broker thing, that you could ask where it was coming from. So you can ask where those offers are coming from.
I bet you $100 that you would get a whole lot of pushback when you ask that question, because I bet 99.
And I would say,
bet
article.
99%. No, I know, but I'm saying 99% of realtors
Yeah.
don't know that that's
Right.
the case.
And And so that's, I mean, that's the point of reading this, like, I don't think I've read this in 2.5 years since I've gone through, so it was very interesting. Cause a lot of what we do, it just seems like common sense morality things, but other things you're gonna hear across and you're gonna go, oh my gosh, I know somebody who did that. I know somebody who did that. I did that.
That was the thing, is as we were having this conversation, I am an integritous person.
Yeah.
I don't break the code of ethics. Oh, yes, I do.
Right.
I didn't realize I
Yeah.
was.
And, the other thing that he talked about is, and I agree with this 100%, there are people out there practicing our profession that are breaking these on the daily without any sense of, I don't care, you know, they don't care. We need to be telling on them. Cause I
That
don't
came
want
from
to
Jeff Kester, didn't
It
it?
came from Jeff Kester. I do not want to be in the same category as somebody who does things badly. I mean, we have that whole conversation. We've got the lawsuit, all of those things, and I don't want to be on the same level as somebody who does everything they can to sell a home that's completely against our articles, let alone a law. So tell on them.
Hey, Cassie, quick question.
That scared me.
Hi, sorry. So with the broker thing, is that only if they've agreed to let you disclose offers, or is that even if they haven't?
No, that's if you have authorized to disclose the facts.
Yes,
Okay.
after motivating factors before love letters, right?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure, because I was like, well, if they don't authorize you to disclose offers, then I didn't think you could disclose anything.
They have to disclose, you have to give the right to disclose offers, and then you also have to give the right to disclose terms, such as like price, and I'm assuming that's when brokerage comes to play, because
Yeah.
offers would be a yes or no question if there's
Right.
any other.
And then terms, you're
are
right,
gonna
there's two
be-
blocks on that, yeah.
That's
there's
just
two
gonna
blocks on
be
that.
where it's coming from, the price and closing
Perfect.
costs or whatever else we talk about.
Yes.
Fantastic. That's what I needed to know. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so really interesting, and you can see, and then their buyer tenor agreements must advise company policies regarding cooperation, blah, blah, blah. Let me go to, there's that. Yeah, see, it does say where disclosure is authorized, realtor shall disclose if asked where offers obtained by the listing office. So if asked, that's the big one. If you don't ask, you don't get the information. And it's today negotiations or is tomorrow?
Today is working.
No,
on
working
buyers.
by sellers. Tomorrow is tomorrow
Thursday's
negotiations. So they'll talk about that too. Like you've got to know, you've got to ask those questions, even if they're no's because they can't, don't assume it's a no. Ask, and Nate will say this too, sometimes they'll just give you the farm, you know?
Sing like a bird.
Yeah, you'll ask questions and they're gonna tell you, oh, they might take, they'll take 110. Okay.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, but if they're a client, hopefully their client told them they can say that. That's the hope that I would have. So, and there's a whole bunch of obligations to discover. One of them was the material facts. The retailer shall avoid exaggeration, misrepresentation, or concealment of pertinent facts relating to the property or the transaction. Realtors shall not, however, be obligated to discover latent defects in the property, to advise on matters outside the scope of their real estate license, or disclose facts which were confident under the scope of agency or non-agency relationships as defined by law. Yeah.
I have a question.
Any exaggerations we've ever heard of or misrepresentations? Yeah.
I have a question on some of this, my nephew just bought a house, of course, he didn't want my fingers in it, 'cause he knew I'm gonna blow the whistle on a bunch of stuff. But the agent flat out told him, this will go FHA, and there's like wallpaper coming down, that furnace is like falling through the floor. There's rips in the linoleum like this big and a bunch of other stuff. And his agent's like, oh no, this will go FHA. And then somebody agrees somebody's palm when it came to appraisal to overlook it.
Okay, well, I mean, if that happened, file a complaint. I mean, I can't do anything about that, but I mean, that's, yeah.
I mean, he wouldn't even tell me the agent's name. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't want you getting in trouble. And I was like, that is some pretty big stuff there, dude.
Well, you should be able to find who it is, get on the MLS.
Yeah,
and
if
find
it's
out who
listed on the MLS,
the
you can
listing
see.
agent, the selling agent, just go to the address and find out who, Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But, so exaggeration, misrepresentation, concealment, what do those things mean to you guys? Or what do you think when you read those words?
You're trying to hide something.
Busted. Yeah. What about those beautiful pictures on the internet that have been photoshopped and
Where you
You
show
want-
up and you're like, this
you want
is.
this is not what, yeah.
Or they
there's
use the
no-
pictures from 3 years ago.
There's no carpeting,
Fished.
yeah.
Car, house fish.
Yeah.
Not my car, Shanna. No, my car.
So those are part of our ethics, you know, oh, this beautiful property on blah, 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 you know.
Quiet neighborhood.
Yeah, quiet neighborhood, it's cozy, just say it's small.
But
if you
some of
intentionally
that
get
is
pictures
someone's
out?
opinion though.
It
Like I can say something is a
AI.
beautiful property and
It
you may
can
think
be.
it's junk, but that's my opinion.
I would say
So-
like if you choose to leave a picture out on the listing,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Like you get pictures of the whole
The bathroom
property.
wall is
And
missing.
yeah, there's some nasty
Yeah.
little corner or whatever, and you're like,
And that would be interpretation if you were to bring it up, but I mean, if you see someone that's doing this all the time, like every home you walk into on their photographs.
yeah, I would say a better example would be, do you all remember when Nicole had that one listing buyer? I'm sorry, and she showed up to the property and she's looking at the MLS pictures of a fully intact house and it's
Uh-huh.
like been burnt down.
Oh, yeah, and the kitchen was burnt.
Yeah, and
Oh,
the-
snap.
she was like, okay, that would be complete misrepresentation, right? You're just trying to get him in the door.
And
right?
didn't even say it
Versus
was a
clever
buyer?
marketing. I don't believe so, because I think she
Yeah.
found out later,
Yeah.
but
So that's misrepresentation. The other part is about the discovery. We are not obligated to go under the house and find out whether there's mold in there, because that's not our purview. We do not go and check the electrical to make sure that everything, it's not our purview. But if we know that a highway is coming through, we have to release that. We don't have to go research it.
Who was it that did a class and was like, even if you say, oh, I don't smell mold,
Yeah.
Well,
you can't even say that.
Hold on just a second about
Because I said that, and I was like-
about the highway though. To my opinion is, and I may be wrong, you went to the class, I didn't, so tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But if it's public information, it's not my job to tell you what's public. If a highway is gonna be built and that's public information and I'm the listing agent or even the seller, it's not my job to point that out to you. You should have done your own due diligence and found out public information. Am I wrong on that?
Shall not be obligated to discover latent defects in the property or advise on matters. Let me find the other one, because there's a different one. I thought that, hold on just a second.
That's a hard line to try to draw though.
I'd be as a.
No, and I have to find it because there are some specific words. If it was like common knowledge, you
But if it's
can't,
public, it's common
you
knowledge.
have to disclose.
You have to disclose common knowledge?
You have to disclose what you know about the property.
in a discriminatory way.
Yeah, you have to disclose what you know about, and he said things like highways or streets or new subdivision. So, and I asked, I said, so here, across the street, behind a couple of plots of land in my neighborhood, they're cutting down trees. If I were to sell that piece of land across the street from me, am I obligated to find out what's going in there? Do I have to go research it? No, I don't have to go search that out. But if I know, because we've already had a zoning, there's a zoning thing up there, or they've sent me letters in my neighborhood that there's a subdivision going in, I must disclose it. It's just the same as the home. They don't have to go looking for cracks in the basement, but if they see there's a crack in the basement, and actually we should, I mean, that's our home, we have to disclose it.
But at what point am I then obligated to just do a mental dump of everything that I know that might
About the house.
possibly be construed as a material fact to this property? and
That would
now I
be to
just
the
puke it on
That
you?
would be the detriment of the property.
Yeah, but one person may think a highway is a benefit because they're close to the highway, and one person thinks it's horrible because of the noise. Like, how do I decide as the agent or even the seller to determine whether you as the buyer are gonna think that's a great benefit or a detriment? That would
I
be
always
my
think everything's a great benefit. There's a new highway coming in. You're going to have amazing access to wherever
Right.
you're going. This is a selling feature of the house. it doesn't say that you have to list any feature as a negative feature. You could say, I have a burned out kitchen. It's a
Right.
fantastic
Kansas
feature for you to have the
Express.
kitchen of your dreams installed.
No, but I'm not
Remodel
trying to say that you
opportunity.
shouldn't try to spin negatives into a positive light. My point is that when you list a house, I know that there is a business that's a block away that you may hear impact wrenches from the mechanic. I know that there's a road that may or may, that's busy, that may or may not be at what point is it my job to vomit everything that's in my
That you
brain?
know, or that you went and searched out, that you think you have to go search out?
No, I know, I'm just saying, but I'm just saying like the property, for example, that I'm listing in Rogersville. I mean, Rogersville's a growing community. There's, I know that they're built, this highway is relatively busy and the house is only 6 houses away from the highway, so maybe they hear a road noise, like,
Well, that's,
at what point
that's-
is it?
that's visible. You're seeing that. That's knowing that's on the highway. You're not telling someone, by the way, here we are on the highway, there's traffic, which they know. I'm talking about the things that they don't
Would
know.
be changing that.
So
they
let me-
know of.
let me ask,
Because
yeah,
I'm
new
kind
airport
of stuck
coming
in
in,
between
so-
you guys as far as like, ooh, I get it, and ooh, I get it, right?
Right.
So first off, I think you're gonna have to internalize a little bit on which way you want to go with this.
Or ask,
Or you could always.
Give her
ask,
Dawn.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is the Kansas Expressway, right? So think about those people in whatever, is it Woodland Hills or whatever that.
Yeah, whatever that one
Yeah, that
is.
little subdivision is that it backs right in, and you knew it had been improved and you knew it was coming. Is that something you would put in the disclosures? Cause I certainly don't want that in my marketing, or is it gonna be in my agent remarks?
it'd be in disclosure.
But hold on just a
Okay.
second, though. I'm 42 years old. I have known since I was about 10 years old that they were going to expand Kansas Expressway
Yes.
to the south. And if someone doesn't know that, and it's been public knowledge for 30 flipping years, like, is that my fault?
Okay, so let's not do Kansas Expressway. Let's do 14 Highway in Nixa, where all the people on those streets lost 10 feet of their front yard on both sides. That didn't happen until 3 years ago. So 5 years ago, it's not material, it was in existence. 2.5 years ago, someone sells that property because they know it's coming. And they don't, and they want to use the front yard and they don't disclose it.
I don't know. I mean, to me, though, it's public knowledge, though. Like, at what point is it my job as a seller or a listing agent to tell you things that you could go figure out yourself?
I think it just has to do with on the seller ultimately, in my opinion, like you have to choose which way you need to go, but on us, it falls just like if the seller told you, hey, our foundation's failing, and you're like, and you know
Yes.
that they leave it
Oh,
on
I
the seller's
agree
disclosures or
100%
whatever,
on
it's
that.
like, if they tell you something that you know is a detriment to the property.
Well,
could
what
be
if they
they're
tell
trying to
you,
hide
I'm
it or
selling this
whatever,
because I'm losing the
do.
front 10 feet of my house, my yard?
My opinion is no, because it's public knowledge, but public knowledge is not that the foundation is
Well,
failing.
that's a defect, and then these are adverse, I have to find the term, that was my problem. is
But
finding the
Typically
term.
why it says buyer and buyer's agent to do due diligence, right?
Exactly.
So if you
Exactly.
don't. Yeah, I think I think that the reason why this is ethic is it's all about like you choosing to do the right thing.
Mhm.
I would say, like, God forbid anybody gets in a lawsuit or anything and they get really picky and you guys are entangled in whatever the seller's tried to do or your client tried to do. Because it is public information, but if someone's moving here from somewhere else
know
or
how they're at it.
whatever, they can go seek out that stuff and it's in the contract to try to protect, but we all know
Yeah.
that contracts fail and push comes to shove, but.
And then let's
you
say
have
we're
to
doing
check.
0 data days because we don't wanna lose
Yeah.
the offer.
Well,
And so we told them that 0 data days makes it a better thing, and then 3 days later, they find out about the highway.
well, to Tori's point, though, like the listing that I signed last night, I hand them the seller's disclosures and I'm like, here's 2 copies, just in case you're doing it, you mess something up. But I said, keep in mind that you should disclose everything that you know that may be
Right.
material facts to this house.
Mhm.
And I said, furthermore, if I become aware of anything that is a material fact to this house,
Right.
I have to disclose it, whether you want me to or not.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. fill it out, be truthful about it,
Yeah.
but just know, and I used the example last night, I'm like, so just for example, you tell me, hey, there's really bad mold in the crawl space. And you may decide that you don't want to disclose that, I have to, because now I know about
Exactly.
it. To me, that's
Yeah,
what,
that's the
that's what the ethics is, but to me, as the listing agent, it's not my job to go tell you as the buyer's agent everything that I know that's public knowledge that you should also research. And the point is, as a buyer's agent, be a good buyer's agent.
Right.
And so like that client that's moving here from out of town, they picked a bad agent,
Yeah.
but that's that buyer's agent's fault
Yeah.
of being bad and not knowledgeable about the area and all that.
Well, and
It's not my
and when I
fault.
said, I mean, because this is both sides of them knowing it. And so again, when you know that pertinent information, you give that. And so yes, the buyer's agent would be a part of it. Would they come to you if something happened and you, I mean, here's the thing, if you go to court, I'm not even, no, it's not my purview. Okay, so Jeff explains it a lot better than I can. I'm just telling you, think about these things. And if you're like talking yourself out of telling something, you probably need to be telling it. Or you're trying to find a reason why not to tell it. I would rather be safe than
That's a
sorry.
very good point.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's not worth losing your license over
sure.
something or ending up in a lawsuit
sure.
or whatever.
Well, and I kind of think about too, like, let's say up the losing the front yard or whatever,
Mhm.
and you knew about it and you didn't say anything, and then this buyer agent doesn't, and then it becomes an issue, I promise you, and
Right.
you're all getting pulled in on it.
Yeah.
Do you want to sit there and be like, yeah, Holly, I knew, why didn't you?
Yeah.
You
So
kinda like-
at what point do you disclose that to someone?
I
Like,
think if I knew, like, I'm not gonna
Locking
go
the
out and
door.
research it, but if I knew that, like, I think about the people on Weaver Road who 100%, once the Kansas Expressway was a go, they were gonna lose a big chunk of their front yards.
Mhm.
I would have to say in the disclosures, I would put it in there, and it's on you, Holly, because you're the buyer agent on this one. If you didn't read that, right? But I don't know that I'm gonna publicly market that where it goes on
Right.
Realtor.com and Zillow.
So
and things like
that,
because that would be a
right, yeah, I'm not gonna market it,
Put
but
it in the agent remarks, I'd almost just put it in disclosures though.
Yeah, it is
so you
disclosure.
can, so you can add things, so, cause I was always under the impression that
It's
they
the
filled out the
seller,
disclosures.
but I would
Yeah.
advise my seller to add that.
yeah.
That's for the house disclosures.
Well, that's part of it though, if you know, there's gotta be a section in there, isn't there?
There's a neighborhood section like
Yeah,
that.
about
Oh,
like
okay.
anything with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But if I didn't know, I didn't know,
Right.
right? I think that's the thing is when you know,
Right.
you know.
Right.
I
But then you
think-
could put it in agent remarks
Right.
and just say, hey, FYI, they're expanding whatever road.
Yeah, you don't have to get specific and say they're gonna take 10 feet of your, you can just
Right.
say they're expanding, do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Say your
the hill that's getting cleared behind my neighbor's lot, I have no idea what's going on there. And we've even asked, our neighborhood doesn't know what's going on. So I have even tried, but just for my own information. But had I found out that Bustle is putting more houses back there and I'm showing this piece of land and they look up and there's trees coming down, and I can say either A, I don't know. I've asked and I don't know, because I don't. There's nothing in my brain that tells me what's going on back there. Or yeah, I found out there's more homes going in back there. Because it was all just woods and pretty and we had our croakers and it sounded very country out there, but it's, you know, but if I know it, I'm gonna say it.
But see, what I struggle about is like, if you're the buyer's agent, 100%, like if your client asks you what's
That's
going
why I said
on.
I'm a buyer. Yeah, I'm
So you
selling,
explain it.
yeah, I'm,
But if you're the seller though, and you're the listing agent, who's to say that building a subdivision nearby is a detriment? Maybe the buyer will think it's a positive because there's gonna
Right.
be more people
Well-
for them to talk to and go walk their dog
I
with or
say
whatever.
detriment, it was adverse. Adverse is the term that they use. I said detriment, but I'm looking at it's adverse because it does change the property. So having a subdivision behind that house changes the property.
You got a
Yeah.
question?
No,
I saw.
no, I'm just trying to.
I know, it's a lot, like,
And also,
and
guys-
it creates a ton of conversation.
And remember, Cass is doing you guys a favor by just relaying what she
Yes,
heard and understood.
agreed.
Yeah,
So
I think
this
I'm a-
isn't up for argument against what Cass thinks or,
True.
I'm just
okay?
trying to explain.
This is, yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I know you and your intent is a conversation and
Yeah.
better
And
understanding.
we did the same thing. It was 2 hours and we only got through 5.
Oh, wow.
So what the point is
Wow.
that there's a lot in there that we probably don't think about day to day. Fair?
And I'm gonna say too, they are going to do a session, a course, 6 2-hour sessions on ethics. It'll be really a lot like this. And then you will be certified code of ethics, GSBOR.
Don't
And
mess up.
It's gonna be a big deal. And they're gonna put like that in the newspaper. There'll be a press release that these agents are GSBR code of ethics certified.
Will this count for your continuing ed?
It does not.
Okay.
Is this one for tomorrow?
No.
Oh.
No, they haven't started it yet. They did, what did you do? What's tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
What?
There's a diversity class.
Diversity, yeah, there's a diversity class
Yeah, I'm doing
tomorrow.
that with Mark. It was marked down from $60 to 20.
Yes, it was marked down for
Yeah.
6 hours.
I took that
I
one.
like your point though, Cass, is just, if you feel like you're gonna have to justify why you're not disclosing something, then just disclose it. I feel like that's a
If you don't
good,
know,
that's a
actually,
good
no,
little
no.
Yeah, cause
determiner.
if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And then if you say, I'll find out, okay, now you gotta find out. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my thing is the whole Kansas Expressway thing. My husband, is a land surveyor, so I've known about that for a long time, cause he's done that whole thing.
Yeah.
However, I'm very directionally challenged, so if I had a buyer that was going in and they had not cleared that out yet behind their property, and they didn't disclose that as a seller, which I feel like they should, but say they didn't. Now it becomes my job, I guess, to then research what could happen with the field behind their house. Like, I know about
No.
Kansas Expressway,
Not
but I
good,
don't
yeah.
know where it's going.
No, because that means we would have to research everything. I gotta figure out what's going in over there before I lease to this person. Yeah.
Like, I was like, where do we stop that?
Like, where do
sign?
you draw the
Like,
line?
there's-
Yeah.
Right.
And I think
Not could, so, and I'll say like, Ward Ridge, up there by, Academy and Sam's and the library. That's been going on for 5, 6, 7 years. And I have now found out that the back part of the land is going to be, luxury apartments and retail. I was told before I researched it, it was going to be duplexes and old folks' homes, because that's what my client was told.
I was told it was gonna be big shots.
Yeah.
Dang it, I know, so
So I
excited.
went and found what I could, because he was given some information and it was right behind Quail Creek. And I went and found the architects, because we were going to buy this home and this was stopping him because he thought it was gonna be old folks and duplexes. And I found what I could find. That's what I found, but I don't know what's going on in the rest of it. I can assume it's high end because no one's building low end things, but I don't have to go search it out. And the reason I did for that one is because he asked what was going in because he was told something. So now I know. So if his neighbor, I can show them the piece of paper that I found. This is the only thing that I found from the owners of that piece of property, because I do know it. And I would disclose that.
To kind of go off of what you were saying too, my thoughts are that, like, if you know something and it would help your person make a decision one way or another, I would be that person. Just like if you came to me in a clothing store and I didn't think it looked good, I would say, we may look for something else, right? Because that's how I'm gonna operate my business.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, I've heard, and I don't hold me to this, but this could be some of the planning here. It could also be 10 years out, and we all know people buy and sell every 5 to 7 years, so you may
Right.
be out of the woods on that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have to disclose the 20-year plans, the 10-year plans. It's what's happening now and that to be happening. And so I get it. It's like, you get nervous. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I have to know? Because we talked about that with Jeff, and Kansas Expressway was the big one. So 10 years ago, when they were buying those properties, if someone bought it 10 years ago before it came to fruition and for sure was gonna happen, and they weren't told about it, and I'm pretty sure they probably did have some complaints because it was public knowledge. So if it's public knowledge, that means you know it. And if you know it,
Well, they've also, the Kansas Expressway, they've known the path of where it was going
Yeah.
to go for 30 years.
right.
So like for anyone that bought a house in the last
Right, but
30
when
years.
the CSIP came in and and the sign goes up that it's going in and you avoid that sign to go around. Yeah.
Rally your clients.
So we can do this again still, obviously.
Yeah, no, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank
It's been really good. It's, like I said, it's not riveting. And then next time we'll actually do real cases that went to whatever it is. It's not court,
Like
it's
the grievance
MREC.
committee or
Yeah, it
whatever?
went to the MREC and to the ethics committee, and what they decided. It's really, It's really,
Oh, that's
really
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cause you're like,
What is
oh,
that
I think I
like?
did that.
Let's get together about next week. Guys, thank you for sticking it out. Great information
Yes,
today.
awesome.
This is recorded. We will have it in the video
But this
library.
is-
We'll send out a recap. Goodbye, everyone.
Oh, someone had